Our guest is Mark Levin, the great one. And I have to say this every time I do an interview with, every time he's kind enough to do an interview with me, because he doesn't do many anymore. He doesn't need to, doesn't want to. He restricts himself, sort of a Henry David Thoreau, out at Walden. He only comes forth and makes pronouncements and goes back. But this is the guy that gave me my start in radio. He gave me my first opportunity to guest host his national show, and I will be forever grateful to him. To the great one, Mark Levin. Glad to have you, sir.
And I am forever grateful to you, my friend, because I wouldn't be in Houston otherwise. So
well,
thank you very much.
I think I'm a big fan, and I remain a big fan. And I see you on Fox News last week, and you're the toast of the town. And Sean had you on during the day, and then he had you on the TV show. And I mean, people can't get enough of you. And you've become this sort of intellectual sage for our way of thinking. And it's like a lot of people in Tea Party feel like they know things are going wrong. They don't know how to fix it. And you've written a book that's designed with a prescription for just that, called the Liberty Amendments. What are the Liberty Amendments?
Well, Michael, you are a student of the law and the Constitution, and I just feel we're so unmoored from the Constitution, that we are in a post-constitutional period, that we really need to be more serious, as a public, as a people, and not just chase our politicians around when they're throwing silver dollars at us and trying to distract us. The fact of the matter is Obama announces almost every day that he's an imperial president. The Supreme Court issues rulings that are, in many cases, utterly preposterous, with one justice moving in one direction or the other and imposing his or her will on the entire nation, like with Obamacare. They rewrote the Constitution. They amended it right there on the fly. You've got Congress writing these massive telephone book-thick pages and pages of laws, and they don't even know what's in it. And then they confer all this power on this massive bureaucracy that passes 3,000 laws every single year, and we're told to live with it. You don't like Obamacare? Too bad, it's the law. Or you don't like the EPA? Well, too bad, comply. And, I've written these other books analyzing this stuff and philosophy and conservatism and liberalism, and I get a lot of calls, and I'm sure you do, where people say, well, what are we going to do about it? What are we going to do about it? And I know it's not true to tell them just elect more Republicans, because that's not going to fix it. We had 6 years of George W. Bush and a Republican House and a Republican Senate, and it was the most profligate spending federal government in American history until this one. And the expanding Medicare and expanding public federal role in public education and so forth. So I don't disagree that we ought to fight for the Ted Cruzes and the Mike Lees and so forth at the national level, and I've been involved in those fights. And I don't disagree that we shouldn't take them to court where we can. I run a foundation. I'm in court endlessly with these people. But the system is broken. This is a systemic problem because we're unmoored from the Constitution. It's been a 100-year battle with the progressives, starting even before Wilson, but he was a major impetus for this. You cannot have this centralized, top-down, authoritarian, utopianism type government and at the same time have a constitutional republic. And we have to admit that they've won. And what I'm saying is we need to breathe life into a dormant constitution, and the way to do that is to embrace the Constitution, to restore the Constitution and the republic.
Mark Levin is our guest. The book is called The Liberty Amendments, Restoring the American Republic. One of the things you lay out as a prescription is term limits, to which many, myself included, would say we have term limits. There are elections. How do you respond to that?
Well, we also have a professional, entrenched ruling class. And I went back and looked at this because I had been skeptical about it many, many years ago, but not anymore. And it's interesting. The framers never believed that there would be this entrenched professional political class that would run time and time and time again. As a matter of fact, for the most of the 1800s, most members of the House served one term. They had a 50% turnover. We had what was called this historic election in 2010 where 85% of the incumbents held their seats. And that's done partly through gerrymandering and so forth. And we don't really have term limits as a result of elections because most people have no idea what their members of Congress are doing or their senators are doing because they are involved in so much, and the federal government is so different than when the Constitution was established, that, yes, we vote for a senator, but do you know that your senator passes statutes giving power to the executive branch to pass laws? People have no idea what senators did in the month of July or June or March and so forth, and they're doing a whole lot. And often they're doing it in the dark, undercover, like with the immigration bill. They put these little gang groups together, and they write their bills and so forth. And what the framers had wanted was a citizen legislature. And Ben Franklin talked about it at length, and I quote him at length in this particular chapter proposing this amendment. And we had part-time members of Congress and senators. They were farmers. They go back to farming. They were small businessmen. They would go back to their businesses. They didn't give it up. Today, obviously, they do none of these things. So,
in the case of
go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, in the case of Ben Franklin, they were printers, a leather apron man.
Right, that's
one
true.
Of my favorites, and I know one of yours. The book is called "The Liberty Amendments: Restoring the American Republic." Of the 11 prescriptions you make for America, which of them is the most important?
Well, I can't say which is the most important, but one of the reforms that I think is very important is the one that addresses the Supreme Court. And as I say, there's 11 of them. But this one, it term limits Supreme Court justices, which I first proposed to Men in Black 8 or 9 years ago, to 12-year terms on a rotation basis. And the reason is simple. The Supreme Court is not what the Supreme Court was intended to be when the framers created this Constitution. It's not only an independent body, which it should be, but it is supreme in the sense that it rules supreme over the entirety of society. So if the court puts out a bad decision in Dred Scott or Plessy or Korematsu or Roe v. Wade or on the same-sex marriage or whatever, whether you agree with them or not, the point is these are imperfect human beings who make mistakes or who use their positions to impose their own positions on the nation. And there needs to be, in my view, something short of this Politburo mentality where John Roberts rewrites the Constitution and rewrites the Obamacare law, and we're told that's the law, live with it. No, I think the broader body politic, I'm not into plebiscites and majoritarianism, I'm into representative government. I think the broader body politic, that is the states, 3/5 of the states, with the power to override a majority decision, not amend it, rewrite it, or whatever, just expunge it. And 3/5 of the House and the Senate, same thing, is a perfectly legitimate response to judicial tyranny in some of these cases or an out-of-control court system in some of these cases. So that's one of the things I propose.
The Liberty Amendments. Mark Levin is our guest.
The Michael Berry Show.